The hunt begins. The Void Stalker, a heavily armored starship, lurked in the endless expanse of deep space, its dark hull seamlessly blending into the void. The crew aboard the ship had spent the last 5 days tracking a target, a small human vessel traveling alone. Their leader, Captain HFY, watched the monitor closely, his reptilian eyes narrowing as the ship came into focus. "Are you certain it is human?" HFY asked, his deep guttural voice filling the dimly lit bridge. First Officer Coulter, a towering insectoid with sharp mandibles, double-checked the readings. His clawed fingers tapped against the control panel, his chitinous shell clicking slightly as he shifted uneasily. "Yes, Captain. It's a human scout-class ship. Small, lightly armed. A perfect target," Coulter confirmed. HFY exhaled through his sharp, needle-like teeth. He had dealt with humans before, and while their technology was unremarkable compared to the Dominion Empire, their reputation for resilience and unpredictability made him wary. "Proceed with the tractor beam," HFY commanded. "Prepare the boarding party. We take whatever valuables they have and leave no witnesses." The crew obeyed without question, activating the ship's gravity tether. A pulse of blue energy lashed out, seizing the human ship in its grip. The vessel, marked with the name Stellar Hope, jerked violently but offered no resistance. That was strange. HFY expected the humans to at least attempt an escape maneuver. Instead, the ship drifted calmly into their hangar bay. No alarms, no distress signals. It was too easy. HFY felt an unfamiliar sensation creep up his spine. Was it unease? The boarding begins. Armed and armored, the Dominion raiding team stormed into the human vessel's airlock, weapons primed for conflict. But what they found inside was unexpected. 6 human children, aged anywhere from 5 to 12, stood in the ship's main corridor. They were wearing matching blue and silver jumpsuits with insignias that HFY didn't recognize. Each child had calm expressions, their small eyes scanning the invaders with unsettling curiosity rather than fear. "Captain," Coulter hesitated. "I don't understand." "There are no adults, just younglings." A young human girl with wild curls and dark eyes stepped forward. She looked no older than 7, yet she carried herself with the confidence of a trained soldier. "We surrender," she said simply. The crew exchanged confused glances. Surrender? No begging, no tears, no panic. Something was very wrong. HFY stepped forward, towering over the girl. "Who are you?" he demanded. The oldest boy, maybe 12, stepped protectively in front of the others. He was lean but stood with unwavering confidence, his blue eyes locking onto HFY's without fear. "My name is Ethan Carter," the boy said. "We are part of the Terran Space Scout Corps." HFY had never heard of such a thing, but there was something unsettling about the way the boy spoke with authority, as though he were trained for situations like this. Coulter let out a low, uneasy hiss. "Captain, I've heard rumors about human scouts." "Scouts?" HFY scoffed. "They are children." The girl tilted her head. "Are we?" The way she smiled made HFY's throat tighten. The captain's mistake. Ignoring his instincts, HFY ordered his crew to separate the children into holding cells. It was standard procedure for hostages. Keep them apart, prevent them from planning an escape. "Secure them. No weapons, no technology," he ordered. As the Dominion soldiers led them away, HFY noticed something deeply unsettling. The children were memorizing everything. Their eyes flicked from security cameras to control panels, taking in ship schematics, escape routes, and entry points. The boy, Ethan, barely spoke, but HFY noticed the slight nods and gestures exchanged between the children. They were communicating silently. A warning ignored. Back on the Void Stalker's bridge, a transmission alert blared. Coulter rushed to the console. "Captain, we are receiving an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council." HFY growled. Ignore it. Sir, it's a priority 1 message from the Terran ambassador. That made Xirax pause. Priority 1. Only intergalactic emergencies warranted such a level of urgency. Put it through, Xirax ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the human woman in a dark blue uniform, her face cold and expressionless. She did not look afraid. She did not look desperate. She looked prepared. I am Ambassador Lydia Reynolds of the United Terran Nations, she said, her tone sharp and professional. You have taken 6 Terran children aboard your vessel. Release them immediately. Xirax chuckled. Or what? You have no warships in this sector. The woman did not react to his arrogance. Instead, she leaned forward, her piercing gaze cutting through the screen. Captain Xirax, do you have any idea what you've just done? The way she said it, so calm, so certain, sent a shiver down his spine. They are just children, Xirax scoffed. Reynolds smiled. There is no such thing as just human children. A silent beat passed before she continued. Their distress signals activated the moment you took them. We know exactly where you are. Every major warship within range has already received the alert. They are coming. Xirax glanced at Coulter, who looked genuinely alarmed now. Reynolds wasn't finished. Do you understand what a space scout is, Captain? They are not just students. They are the best and brightest of humanity, trained in tactical warfare, engineering, espionage, and survival from the moment they can walk. Xirax clenched his fists. They're children. They are human children. Reynolds corrected. You took the worst possible hostages in the galaxy. Right now, your ship is compromised. They are already planning their escape. And trust me, when they get out, you won't be their first target. Suddenly, alarms blared through the Void Stalker. Coulter frantically checked the system logs. Sir, power fluctuations detected. Internal security is failing. They've already started hacking the ship's mainframe. Adore spun back to the screen. But the Terran ambassador was gone. The transmission had ended. And then, over the ship's intercom, a child's cheerful voice echoed. It was the young girl, the one with curls. Hey, Captain, she said playfully. Did you really think we'd just sit here and wait? Xirax's stomach dropped. That was when the lights flickered out. The ship trembled. The hunt had begun, but not in the way Xirax had expected. The hunters become the prey. The Void Stalker trembled as alarms blared through its corridors, the usual dark atmosphere of the pirate ship now punctuated by flashing red warning lights. Captain Xirax stood motionless on the bridge, his reptilian fingers gripping the armrests of his command chair as he processed what had just happened. The human children, the ones he had dismissed as nothing more than helpless cargo, had already started dismantling his ship's security systems. The girl's voice over the intercom still echoed in his mind. Did you really think we'd just sit here and wait? A chill ran down his spine. His first officer, Coulter, was frantically typing commands into the ship's security console, trying to regain control. Captain, sections of the ship are going into lockdown. Coulter hissed, his antennae twitching with distress. The prisoners have overridden the security grid. They're controlling bulkheads, disabling cameras, and rerouting power. Xirax bared his teeth, rage bubbling beneath the surface. How? They had nothing when we locked them up. Coulter didn't answer immediately. He was scanning system logs, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. His mandibles clicked as he realized something horrifying. Captain, he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. They must have smuggled microtools inside their uniforms, possibly inside their bodies. Xirax turned to him sharply. That's impossible. We scanned them. Coulter's claws tapped anxiously against the console. Humans are resourceful. If anyone could find a way around our scans, it's them. Xirax's rage turned into cold calculation. He had heard whispers about human ingenuity before, but he had never truly believed the stories. It was his first mistake, and now it was costing him control of his own ship. Meanwhile, inside the holding cells, Ethan Carter knelt beside the control panel in his cell, working swiftly. His fingers danced over the small hacked datapad he had built from scraps, bits of wiring stolen from the ship's ventilation system, a power core extracted from the security panel, and a thin circuit chip he had hidden inside his tooth before being captured. A soft beep confirmed his success. Cell doors unlocked. The metallic hiss of prison doors sliding open echoed through the detention block. One by one, the other space scouts stepped out. Rose, the red-haired girl who had spoken over the intercom, was already smirking. "I told you they'd underestimate us." Mary, the group's tech specialist, was holding up another hacked control device. "I rerouted half the ship's power grid. We now control all non-critical systems." Ethan turned to the others. "We stick to the plan. Disrupt the ship, keep them off balance, and disable their weapons before the fleet arrives." "Are we allowed to punch them?" Toby, the tallest and strongest of the group, asked. "Only if necessary," Ethan replied with a grin. "Good," Toby said, cracking his knuckles. The Space Scouts split into two teams, one to disable ship functions, the other to neutralize threats. It was their turn to hunt. The pirates began to panic. Back on the bridge, Coulter's insectoid eyes widened in horror as he watched the security feeds. The children were loose. Worse, they moved like trained operatives, ducking behind cover, avoiding cameras, and coordinating in a way no ordinary younglings ever would. Xyrax's claws dug into his command chair. "Send the guards after them. Kill them if necessary." Coulter hesitated. "Captain, they are just children." Xyrax turned to him, eyes burning with fury. "Do they look like just CHRILTRDN to you?" Coulter swallowed hard. The video feeds showed two guards lying unconscious in the hallway. Their weapons were gone. The camera in engineering showed Mary rewiring the ship's core systems, bypassing security faster than a Dominion specialist. In the armory, Toby and another scout had knocked out two more guards and were now arming themselves with stun blasters. The pirates were losing control to a group of humans that weren't even teenagers. Xyrax felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The first battle. Ethan and Rose moved silently through the lower decks of the ship, keeping to the shadows. A group of 3 pirate guards turned the corner, weapons drawn. Rose whispered, 3 enemies ahead. 2 armed with rifles. 1 with a blade. Ethan nodded. Plan Delta. On my mark. The guards barely had time to react. Rose rolled a small device onto the floor, a shock grenade made from a hacked energy cell. A sharp pulse of electricity burst through the corridor. The guards jerked violently before crumpling to the ground, their weapons short-circuited. Ethan and Rose quickly disarmed them. "See," Rose grinned. "Easy." Ethan chuckled. "You're enjoying this too much." "You know you are too," she shot back. They continued forward, their mission clear, reached the bridge. It was time to end this. Xyrax's last stand. On the bridge, Xyrax was breathing heavily. His ship was falling apart from the inside. The security grid was failing. His crew was panicked. And now, the security feeds showed something that made his blood run cold. The children were heading straight for him. "Seal the bridge," Xyrax roared. The doors locked. He turned to Coulter. "We hold this position. When the reinforcements arrive, we bargain for our lives." Coulter hesitated. "Sir, the children aren't killing anyone. They are only disabling systems and neutralizing threats." Xyrax's claws twitched. "You don't understand. That's worse." Coulter looked confused. "Worse." Bared his teeth. "It means they aren't afraid of us." The final move. A few minutes later, the main bridge doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the air as figures stepped through. The Space Scouts. Ethan stood at the front, his blue eyes locked onto Xyrax. Rose, Toby, Mary, and the others flanked him. They didn't have blasters pointed at the pirates. They didn't need them. Xyrax felt it. The cold, undeniable truth. They had already won. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm. "Captain Xyrax, this ship belongs to us now." Xyrax growled. "You wouldn't dare." Ethan tilted his head. "Wouldn't we?" As if in answer, the entire ship's lights flickered back to full power. The scouts now had control over every system. And then, the external sensors blared an alert. A Terran war fleet had arrived. Xyrax collapsed back into his chair, defeated. The last thing he heard before the Terran soldiers stormed in to arrest him was Rose's cheerful voice. "Told you this would be fun." The wrath of humanity. The Void Stalker was no longer a pirate ship. It was a prison. Every corridor was under human control. The ship's security systems, weapons, and navigation had been hijacked by a handful of children who were never supposed to be underestimated. Captain Xyrax sat in his command chair, his claws gripping the armrests so tightly that the reinforced metal groaned under the pressure. Around him, his bridge crew had either surrendered or frozen in fear. The Terran children stood in front of them, not armed, not aggressive, but in absolute control. Xyrax's insectoid first officer, Coulter, trembled beside him. His antennae twitched as the reality of their situation sank in. "Captain," Coulter whispered. What do we do?" Xyrax's eyes burned with frustration, but deep down, he already knew the answer. They had lost. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the bridge, heavy, metallic, and unforgiving. The view screen flickered to life, and the cold, calculating face of Ambassador Lydia Reynolds reappeared. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, those human eyes, burned with silent fury. Xyrax felt an unfamiliar sensation coil in his chest. Dread. A deadly ultimatum. Ambassador Reynolds did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Captain Xyrax," she said calmly. "This is not a negotiation." Xyrax's jaw tightened. "You will power down all remaining weapons, transmit your full crew manifest, and surrender control of the Void Stalker to the Terran fleet," she continued. "Failure to comply will result in immediate and total destruction." Xyrax bristled. "That would violate interstellar." "You violated interstellar law the moment you took our children," Reynolds interrupted. She leaned forward slightly, her expression sharpening into something almost dangerous. "You want to talk about laws? Fine. Let's talk about history. Every major species in this galaxy knows one universal truth." Xyrax felt his throat tighten. "You do not harm human children." Her voice was calm, but the weight behind it felt like an executioner's blade. Xyrax growled, trying to reclaim his authority. "You expect us to roll over like frightened prey. We are warriors of the Dominion." Reynolds gave a slow, chilling smile. "Warriors," she repeated. "No, you're pirates." She let the word hang in the air for a long, suffocating moment. Pirates steal. Pirates kill. Pirates die. Xyrax knew the Void Stalker wasn't getting out of this. Not intact. But he still had one move left. The captain's gamble. Xyrax turned his gaze to Ethan Carter, the oldest of the human children. "You may have control of my ship," Xyrax admitted, voice low and cold. "But there's one thing your precious Terran fleet cannot do." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what's that?" A vicious grin spread across Xyrax's face. "They cannot catch me." Before anyone could react, Xyrax lunged forward, smashing his clawed fist into the control console. The entire Void Stalker shook violently. "Self-destruct, He, an automated voice boomed. 10 minutes until detonation. Coulter gasped. "Captain, what are you?" Hydrax snarled. "If I can't have this ship, then no one can." Rose, standing beside Ethan, tilted her head. "Avo," she said. "That's inconvenient." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Toby, Mary, disable the self-destruct." The two scouts broke into action, darting toward the ship's engineering console. Hydrax laughed, a cruel, rasping sound. "You really think you can override my ship's self-destruct in less than 10 minutes? Mary glanced up from the console, fingers flying across the controls. No, she admitted. "It'll take about 2. Hydrax's laughter died. His expression twisted in horrified disbelief. Toby grinned. "Yeah, bad news for you, buddy. We trained for this. The fastest hack in the galaxy." Hydrax and Coulter could do nothing but watch in shock as Mary worked faster than any pirate engineer Hydrax had ever seen. "Redundant failsafes," she muttered to herself. "Amateurs." Toby stood guard beside her, blocking any last-ditch effort from Hydrax's crew. "All right," Mary said after 90 seconds. "Self-destruct disabled." The automated voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence terminated." Hydrax felt his last hope shatter. The Void Stalker was still theirs. And now, so was he. Ethan turned back to Hydrax, expression unreadable. "Checkmate," he said. Hydrax finally broke. He lunged forward, but before he could even swing a claw, Ethan stepped aside. The pirate stumbled, his own momentum sending him face first onto the floor. Ethan placed a boot on his back, pinning him down. "Captain Hydrax," he said with quiet authority, "you're under arrest. Justice is swift." Minutes later, the Terran warships docked with the Void Stalker. A wave of heavily armed human soldiers flooded the ship, rounding up the defeated pirates with brutal efficiency. Terran and Coulter were restrained in high-security shackles. Ethan and the other scouts stood together as Ambassador Reynolds stepped onto the bridge. She surveyed the scene, then turned to the children with something that almost looked like pride. "You handled yourselves well," she said. Ethan shrugged. "Standard Space Scout training." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Standard." Toby chuckled. "Yeah, we may have overachieved." Reynolds laughed, a rare, genuine sound. "Your parents are going to kill me for letting this happen," she muttered, shaking her head. Rose smirked. "We handled it." Reynolds' gaze softened. "That you did." The final word. As the prisoners were led away, Hydrax turned back one last time. His yellow reptilian eyes locked onto Ethan's calm, unshaken expression. "You are monsters," Hydrax hissed. Ethan simply smiled. "Funny," he said. "We were about to say the same thing about you." Hydrax waited. Thee pressed down on him for the final time. He had thought he was the predator, but humans had proven otherwise. As the Terran fleet prepared for departure, Ethan turned to his team. "All right, who's hungry?" he asked. Rose grinned. "Please tell me we're getting pizza." Mary sighed. "Only if it's not space rations." Toby raised a fist. "No more space rations." Reynolds chuckled. "You just took down a pirate warship, and the first thing you want is food." The scouts exchanged knowing grins. They were human, after all. Humanity's message to the galaxy. The Void Stalker had gone silent. What had once been a ship filled with ruthless, battle-hardened Dominion pirates was now under Terran control. Every system, every corridor, every cell now belonged to the Space Scouts, a handful of human children who had turned the galaxy's most feared raiders into helpless prisoners. Captain Hydrax sat in shackles, his claws bound in energy cuffs, his tail wrapped tightly behind him. He no longer held his head high. The weight of his defeat pressed down on him like an unmovable asteroid. He had underestimated humans. That had been his greatest mistake. Across from him, Ethan Carter, the leader of the Space Scouts, stood with his arms crossed. Beside him were Rose, Mary, and Toby, the 4 children who had crippled his ship, dismantled his crew, and turned his easy ransom into a nightmare. And now, they were preparing for the final step. The Dominion's last hope, HFY's second-in-command, First Officer Coulter, sat bound next to him. His chitinous exoskeleton twitched anxiously. "Captain," Coulter muttered, "if we surrender the Void Stalker, we are finished. The Dominion will exile us." Thyrax growled, his yellow reptilian eyes flickering with resentment. "We are already finished, Coulter." He looked back up at the children, his captors. This should have been impossible. They were just humans, weren't they? The call to the galaxy. A sharp beep echoed through the bridge. Ambassador Lydia Reynolds, the Terran diplomat, stepped forward. She had been silent while the children worked, letting them control the battlefield. But now she had one final task. She activated the Void Stalker's interstellar communication system. Thyrax's stomach twisted. "No," he hissed. Ambassador Reynolds turned toward the screen, ignoring him. "This is Ambassador Lydia Reynolds of the United Terran Nations," she announced, her voice echoing through every Dominion-controlled relay in the sector. "This message is being transmitted to all major factions and neutral zones within the Galactic Council." Thyrax gritted his teeth. He knew what she was about to do. Earlier today, Reynolds continued, the pirate vessel Void Stalker, a ship belonging to the Dominion, kidnapped 6 human children. Silence. "Those children," she continued, "were members of Earth's Space Scouts." Thyrax felt his scales prickle. She was broadcasting this to everyone, and it was about to get worse. The scars of the past. Reynolds' tone became dangerously calm. "There are certain unspoken rules in this galaxy. Some laws are debated, some agreements are broken. But there is one law that is absolute." Her gaze hardened. "You do not touch human children." Thyrax's tail twitched. He had heard stories, warnings, but he had never believed them. Reynolds exhaled slowly, her voice turning sharp. "In the past, other factions have attempted what Captain Thyrax did today. Some thought humanity was soft, that we would beg, that we would pay ransoms, that we would accept our children being taken." Her next words sent a chill through the entire bridge. "Those factions no longer exist." Silence. Tension thickened like a storm cloud. Reynolds continued, "Humanity does not negotiate for its children. We do not pay ransoms. We do not ask politely. We do not forget." She looked directly at the camera. "And we do not forgive." A message written in fire. Thyrax's scales itched. He wanted to scream. This wasn't just a surrender. This was humiliation. For every pirate, every warlord, every Dominion commander in the galaxy to see. They weren't just losing. They were being made an example of. Reynolds pressed forward, her expression unwavering. "Let this serve as a warning to any fool who believes humanity can be toyed with. Today, a Dominion warship, armed with trained pirates, superior firepower, and years of combat experience, was captured. Not by soldiers, not by warships." She gestured to Ethan and the other scouts. "By children." The weight of her words hit like a supernova. Thyrax wanted to look away, but he couldn't. The end of the Void Stalker. Ambassador Reynolds turned back to Ethan. "The Dominion will demand retribution," she warned. "We need to send a final message." Ethan nodded. "I know." He walked to the main control panel. Coulter's eyes widened. "Wait, what are you doing?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he typed in a final command. The screen flashed with a countdown. 10 minutes until full system wipe. Thyrax felt his chest tighten. You're destroying the ship," he spat. Ethan didn't blink. "We don't need it." Thyrax roared in fury, but he knew there was nothing he could do. The Void Stalker was about to become a floating husk, The last remnants of his legacy, erased. And all because of children. The long walk to justice. As the countdown continued, Hexarax and his surviving crew were rounded up. Human soldiers led them toward a docking bay, where Terran warships awaited their arrival. Hexarax clenched his fists as he was forced to march through his own halls, his prisoners now his captors. As he passed by Rose, she gave him a cheerful little wave. "See ya later, Captain," she said. "Oh, wait, you'll be in prison." Toby chuckled. "Yeah, have fun with that." Said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The aftermath. As the last of the prisoners were taken aboard the Terran ships, Ethan stood next to Ambassador Reynolds, watching the Voidstalker from the viewing window. "Do you think they'll learn?" he asked. Reynolds' expression was unreadable. "Maybe," she admitted. "But if they don't," she turned to face him, "they'll find out what happens when humanity gets angry." Ethan smirked. "Sounds like a fun lesson." The final countdown reached 0. And in the darkness of space, the Voidstalker systems went dark, erased from history. The only thing left. A legend. A story whispered among the stars. A warning. Do not touch human children. Not if you want to survive.